A political idea virus and the de-citification of America. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle now. And Bill, Jim Geraghty over at nationalreview.com has a column under the headline, Moving Out and Not Coming Back, where he talks about how a lot of people who left the cities because of the danger of the COVID-19 pandemic are giving serious thought to not returning to the cities and finding that the trade-off isn't worth it to get the city lifestyle, but then also be subjected to the dense population and the facility with which disease spreads therein. Bill, I thought this was a fascinating question, and I really don't care to go into detail about what Jim's saying about it, but it has been an issue that has come up over and over again throughout the years, particularly when it comes to political ideas. And as we decentralize, if indeed that happens, from our concentrated urban areas, a lot of those people will take with them the ideas that they have grown up with, and they will take them to the suburbs and rural areas. And I guess my question is, Bill, does the city shape the man, or will a change in geography change the ideas that a man has?
I'm going to go with B on that one. Although with the caveat that that one of the genuine, serious long-term concerns I have for the country is that California has so badly mismanaged the state that Californians are leaving in record numbers. They're going to places like Texas because Texas has figured out how to run a government. And the problem is they're taking California ideas with them to Texas. And that's turning Texas pinker. If that's what happens with other states, if there's a large-scale immigration from the cities to the country, and they take city ideas with them, then that's bad. I think that over time, they would become more conservative, and I don't know how long that period is. You can't expect somebody who's grown up with one set of values to simply pack up, move, and then completely, immediately change those values. But I do think that that people who move out of blue states into red states do begin to absorb some of the red state morality and philosophy. I think the issue, frankly, Scott, is a question of density. Honestly, it's really that simple. If you take the population of the cities and disperse them out, this is just to make the point. If you were to take the population of New York and disperse it evenly across the United States, you would rapidly turn those New Yorkers into Americans. But if it turns out that large numbers of people leave New York and then go and find a place like, for example, like Austin in Texas, where they don't have to change their values too much, then you get a problem where you've got the huge numbers of city people moving into the country and bringing the city values with them, and then forcing the country people to also undergo that same ruin.
You know, it's a fascinating chicken and egg question, because one wonders whether people gravitate toward densely populated areas because that kind of a mindset that you have to live in close proximity to others, to heavily rely on public transportation, to have your neighbor through a 4-inch wall instead of separated from you by 10 feet or more, as you might be in the suburbs, whether all of that is attractive to a particular kind of person, and so they gravitate in that direction. Is there anything fundamentally different in the mindset of these people that we consider as political divisions? And in saying all this, and I should have said this up front, I know that in every urban area, there are lots of Republicans, and in every rural area, there are Democrats as well. So it's not, when we say a blue state, obviously, we know that it's not 100% Democrat.
No, of course. I think this is more of a nurture versus nature issue, simply because you don't get to decide where you're born. Where you're born in this country is a matter of just chance and providence, whatever you want to call it. If you're born in New York City, you're more likely to have city values. Your parents have city values. All of the people you meet have city values. You're raised with city values, and you're taught that's what life is. That's the norm. The same is true for the country. There are certainly cases of people who are born in the city who feel just a real sense that they want to get out of there and move to the suburbs of the country. And likewise, there are a lot of people born in small towns who just decide they got to get to New York and if they can make it there, they'll make it anywhere. So there's always that kind of migration, but most of it, I think, is just where you happen to be born. I don't think most New Yorkers pine for the suburbs or the plains of Texas in the same way that most Texans don't pine for the concrete canyons of New York.
That poses a real problem, Bill. And in fact, some of your own language betrays a little bit of the problem when you kind of made a snarky remark about New Yorkers moving to America. There has been for many years a challenge for Republicans to reach people in the cities. And I say that it's a challenge for Republicans. In reality, I think Republicans have abdicated that challenge. They've decided just to not even pursue it, and that somehow the city values, so-called, a kind of a phrase that a Ted Cruz might use and get in trouble with the national media over, has really proved to be a barrier to Republicans because whether they acknowledge it openly or not, a lot of Republicans fundamentally think that city people are different and not as good as the kind of people that they're used to hanging out with.
Well, if we want to get into the who feels not as good, if we want to talk about the people that are showcasing their moral and intellectual superiority, if it comes down to the country versus the city, it's not the country people who are lording it over the city people in terms of who they feel is inferior. The entire idea of flyover country is the idea that city people on the east and west coasts are the only ones with educations or any kind of intelligence, and the vast unwashed middle of the country just separates the two. So, but certainly that both sides have a relatively low opinion of the other because their backgrounds and their values are so different. To say that Republicans have abandoned the cities is certainly, I think it's probably fairer to say that the cities have abandoned the Republicans. It wasn't, well, it depends on your definition of long, right? I mean, Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor in 80 years or something. Atlanta is 110 or 120 now, something like that. But many cities had Republican governance relatively recently, and they've been nothing but Democratic strongholds, at least since Lyndon Johnson and the Great Society, when it became the strategy to basically buy black votes by providing benefits. Love to make it more complicated than that, but it isn't. That's how it worked. And there's one noticeable, shocking, glaring example that proves the idea that it is Democratic policies that ruin cities, not the nature of the cities. And that glaring, shocking example is, of course, New York City itself. Under David Dinkins and others, New York was just a cesspool. It was Times Square was just a pit filled with junkies, prostitutes, and people pushing pamphlets for live sex shows into the hands of 12-year-old kids. And then somehow, I guess things got bad enough where a Republican got elected, and over the protests, of course, of many people who said he was a racist and all the so on and so forth. But Rudy Giuliani went into New York, he enforced the law, and New York became unrecognizable. And so in the space of a very, very short time, Giuliani and Bill Braxton enforced the law, and New York went from being the murder capital of the world. I don't think I know it's, I'm virtually positive it's not in the top 10 anymore in terms of murders per capita. Might not be in the top 20. And all of this miraculously happened. And as soon as it had happened, and as soon as Times Square became something like City Walk at, Universal Studios or something, then people began to think, oh, okay, so we're, this is, we can go back to normal now. And then we elect we elect a so-called Republican in terms of Bloomberg, who ran for the Democratic Party nomination, and then Bill de Blasio, who's basically an open communist. And New York's crime continues to rise, and the city's structure continues to crumble, and eventually they might decide to elect another Republican to fix things. But to your deeper point, Scott, the Republicans haven't so much abandoned the city so much as the values of conservatism are very different than the values of cities, and that the entire progressive movement arose from cities. It wasn't
Bill,
like
you would think that this would be seen as a major challenge, and I'm sure some in the Republican Party do see it perennially as a major challenge. I know in my personal experience at the small level of a county Republican committee, I had a personal conversation with a state senator in Pennsylvania who basically discouraged me from campaigning in downtown Allentown, which is a city of only 110,000 people. But he said, don't waste your time there. There's no way you're going to win people over. And I said, well, when are we going to try to win those people over? Because nobody can muster a get out the vote effort when it's not an election year. So nobody's going door to door between elections. And it's only now that we have. And during this time, when we are running for office, we're told don't go there. I would suggest that the Democrats, let's assume bigotry on both sides, okay? But the Democrats have a lot more latitude to burn people, so to speak, than the Republicans do, because the Democrats are controlling the population centers. And even though we have an electoral college, like it or not, the population centers are a major factor in winning national elections.
Well, you make an excellent point. I'm relatively convinced that if I decided to, I could become mayor of Detroit. I know that's an outrageous statement, but because I understand a little bit of something about political messaging, I'm quite sure I could do it as a Republican. Because my campaign would be very simple. It would just be, here's photographs of New York City in 1979, and here's photographs of it in 1990 or 85 even, whatever the case may be. This is what it looked like under Democrats. This is what it looked like under Republicans. Are you happy with your life now? Democrats have told you that things would be worse if you voted for a Republican, but could things possibly be worse than they are in Detroit right now? Wouldn't you rather have a city that works and have jobs available? What could you lose by trying? Give us 4 years, and if you don't see an improvement, you can go back to what you had before.
But I think Republicans really believe what you said earlier, that there's a fundamental difference in the values of city people, and that those are more closely aligned with progressivism than conservatism. And if you believe that, you're not going to try to recruit people in the cities as aggressively as you would elsewhere.
Your statement is entirely true, but the two aren't mutually exclusive. All you're really saying when you get right down to it is it's harder to win city votes than it is to win country votes for conservatives and Republicans. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means people are lazy. And it means that given the mathematics of politics today, your case is a grand example, perfect example of exactly the problem. You have a soul, and that's unusual in politics. You figured, correctly I would add, in my opinion, that you could go into Allentown and win votes in Allentown by simply talking to people. I've seen the result of you talking to people. I've heard stories about people who talk to you. You convert somebody in 5 minutes, and you could certainly have won Allentown. But the mathematics, when I say the mathematics of politics, it has come to it's not even a risk-reward calculation anymore. Now it's a simple dollars per vote calculation. And when your Republican Party back there said it's not worth it, you won't get the votes, what they're saying is that it requires a lot more effort than people have been willing to spend. And they're probably, the best shade you can put on it is for them to say it's worth so much effort that it's not worth your time. It's a net loss in terms of your electability.
And I think you're right. But my complaint is that the entire Republican effort is literally called GOTV, get out the vote. And the purpose of that effort is not to persuade anybody that your ways are better than the other guy's ways, or that they should consider a change. It's just to get the people who already agree with you to show up. And so there's never a conscious, organized effort. And frankly, Democrats do have these efforts. I mean, there's a massively funded effort right now to turn Texas blue, and they're feeling really good about the purple zone right now. So, why is it for some reason that, conservatives can't do what liberals very consciously are doing in Texas, did in Colorado, and elsewhere?
Well, there's a couple things to say here. First of all, you're absolutely right. If the GOP's attitude, and it is get out the vote in cities, then that's just absurd. That's a ridiculous way to go. As you well understand, the motto should not be get out the vote. The Republican motto for cities should be show them the light. I mean, that's what the motto is. If you can show people a better life, you don't have to worry about getting out the vote. It's pointless to get out the vote of people who don't want to vote for you. It's a oxymoron. But that's right in line with Republican Party effectiveness in terms of messaging.
They don't even call those people.
No, and they don't call them because they've already decided, as Mitt Romney decided, that 47% or 43% or whatever of the country is irretrievable. When I was at a fundraiser for Mitt Romney in 2012, standing way in the back, his campaign manager said, took a lot of checks, said, "Don't worry, we're not going to spend any of your money in California." Ha ha ha! Lots of laughs. And I'm the only person in the room, basically said, "Why not? Why not? If you're telling me that this is the best thing for the country and that Republican values are better for the individual, then why not try to win California?" And people look at you like, "Oh my God, you're so naive." But it's not a pipe dream, and it's not impossible. It just requires imagination, persistence, and belief, which is something you have as a politician.
It's funny when you say that, Bill, because you just think the majority of the money that the Republicans are spending, and frankly, I'm just talking about Republicans because I know them best, okay?
That's
the majority of the money that the Republicans are spending, Republicans have an idea about governance that's so great that they have to spend most of their money just getting apathetic members of their own party to show up.
Yeah. And so now we get down to the core difference. And this is the core. When I say core, I mean it is the absolute essence of the Democratic Party and its survival in America as a political force. There are two advantages that the Democrats have that are so monumental that they make it a 50-50 country in spite of the manifest failures of democratic governance everywhere. Manifest failures. The cities that they've managed are bombed out murder pits. So you've got to assume that if they're producing bombed out murder pits, there's got to be something on the other side of that on that scale to allow them to continue to govern bombed out murder pits. And there's two massive things on their side of the scale. One of them is Democrats and liberals have what Evan Sayek called rhetorical intelligence. They understand the art of emotional persuasion. They are very, very good at it. And they understand that people don't vote based on what they think, they vote based on how they feel. And since they're all about feelings and emotions and just by looking at Detroit, it's not a value judgment. They obviously don't care about the rational ability to govern a city. They care about the emotional message necessary in order to them to stay in power and collect the checks and on all the other benefits of being in power in a city like that. So on one level, the big Democratic advantage is that they are much better at messaging because of the more emotional nature of people who become Democrats, and people who are very emotional are drawn to a party that does its business appealing to emotions. But an even bigger problem for Republicans is, and this is it really, is that most Republicans, when it comes to things like, trying to win votes in Allentown or whatever, most Republicans really come down to this. It's like, that's none of my business. It's none of my business how other people vote. Because they're independent and they're people who have their own lives, their own values, and they have no desire to tell other people what to do. The desire to tell other people what to do is the oxygen of progressives. They can't live without it. And so they spend full time doing everything they possibly can. They don't go to church. They don't have jobs. I'm talking about the professionals now. I'm talking about professional politicians on the left. All they do is think about ways to silence conservatives, think about ways to lie about conservative values, think about things like Media Matters, where you listen to hours and hours and hours and hours of conservative commentary every single day and try to find a sentence that you can use to turn them into demons. And this is their life, is politics. Republicans have better things to do. Conservatives have. Not only do we have better things to do than politics, for most conservatives, there's nothing lower on the scale than politics. Politics is the bottom of the stack for conservatives, and it's the top of the stack for progressives. And that's the fundamental difference that allows this to be a 50-50 country. They're able to stay in the fight despite their record of astonishing failure, only because it is their full-time job. And for conservatives, it's not only a chore, it's none of our business. That's the general attitude that I see out there. And the thing that you have to do to convince conservatives to get into this fight is you can't go against that fundamental reaction, because first of all, I like that reaction. I think it's an appropriate reaction. But you have to basically make the head case for conservatives that you may want to be left alone, and you may want government to leave you alone, but government doesn't want to leave you alone. You don't have a choice in this. You don't have let me rephrase that. You don't have the luxury of saying, I don't care what they do over there. They care what you do, and they're coming after you all the time. These dedicated efforts to turn Texas blue are baffling to Texans. They can't understand why the state is turning blue because they've never had to do any defending of Texas, because people are moving to Texas because it's so blatantly obvious that it's a better place to live than California, in terms of governance anyway. And so
we really need a movement to make Texas mediocre again. Now that actually is a profound thought. It really is. That is a profound thought. Accidentally, I'm sure. No, but seriously, Scotty, you could make a very compelling case that Texas, just as the leader among other red states that are drawing people, that Texas is a victim of its own success, that has been so successful at applying conservative principles to governance that it becomes so attractive economically that people simply have to move there. And if Texas wasn't doing so well, they wouldn't. And if they didn't move there, they wouldn't bring their politics with them. Does Texas have a state income tax? No.
No, I didn't think so. It would be in Texas's interest, as a way to save Texas, to have a 5 or 6, 7% sales tax, 2 percentage points under
income
California.
Tax, you mean?
That's what I would. Sorry. That's what I meant to say. Yeah, if I was Texas and I wanted to keep Texas red, I would insist on. In fact, I would pass legislation saying that our sales tax will be 2% below whatever California's is.
Income
and we're going to
tax.
just peg it to. What the hell's the matter with me? Sorry. Income tax. Yes. A sales tax as well, for that matter. But yes, income tax.
We don't edit this show, so we have to do the corrections in real time.
Yeah, and you have no idea how many corrections there are. Yes, but you get the point, right? If you were to basically make Texas just a little bit more attractive than California, then Californians wouldn't move to Texas. Wouldn't be worth it. But Texas is so much better environment for business that it's almost impossible to not leave California for Texas if you want to succeed. And California is doing everything it can to chase every business out of this state. And this AB5 business about gig economies will be the death blow to this, or it will turn California around. We don't know yet. But in any event, yeah, you could make the case that Texas needs to be more liberally governed by conservatives, only to decrease the contrast so that actual liberals don't feel the need to come there and ruin everything.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're grateful for the time that you've devoted with us. There are other people, people you possibly even know, who've not only devoted time, but devoted their own money to making sure that these messages can get out around the country and around the globe, for that matter. They are the members at BillWhittle.com. And in addition to the good feeling that they get for being part of this song of liberty that's swelling a chorus nationwide, they also get the privilege of access to some content that you don't see at BillWhittle.com unless you're a member, including some backstage content from our Right Angle program and other things. In fact, during this coronavirus pandemic process, we've actually started doing some video chats, some group video chats with our members. And those,
they're
frankly, that alone is worth paying for as you become a member at BillWhittle.com. Our numbers have been growing more than ever during this time, and we're grateful for that. In addition to the backstage content, you also get access to a member-written blog. And by member written, I mean you write the blog. And and we don't weed people out. So there's free speech there. We also have a comments section where there's a vibrant discussion going on there. I think you're going to love hanging out with your people, not just like-minded people, because there's disagreement among us, but people who can be encouraging and thoughtful and help you to sharpen your ideas and prepare you for the real debate in the public marketplace. We encourage you to join today by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that Become a Member link. You'll find a link in the description below. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching.